Welcome in, everybody. It is time for me to take over the screen again. This time, we're going to go very basic into more advanced, as you will see throughout the series. This series is definitely going to be about flow, geometry, and flow arts. Basically, mostly focusing on gloving. I'm definitely going to do parts to the series because it's going to be a lot of stuff that I'm going to be talking about, but I kind of want to start at the base. The base of what? Well, the base of existence, basically. How is this all linked together with flow arts, gloving? Well, you'll kind of see as we progress through each part of the series. But I definitely want to touch on this topic because it is very interesting. It's not only linked to flow arts, it's not only linked to gloving, it's linked to pretty much everything. And that's kind of what I want you to gain from this video. And so without further ado, we're going to be looking at sacred geometry. As you can see, I am displaying the flower of life, and we will be explaining what that is in this video as well. I also have it on my arm, and I even got this before I even knew about sacred geometry or the flower of life because I was so attracted to it. And I didn't really know why I was so attracted to it, but it definitely came to me and showed me why it is so significant, why it is so sacred, why it's so amazing, basically. Because with this pattern, you can basically, break down the universe. Because the universe is basically composed of mathematical equations, believe it or not. And you can find so much information through these geometrical patterns. And we're going to be getting into what they all mean, how it's all connected, how you can basically get the pattern of creation through all these geometrical shapes. And definitely want to get into this because this is not something that is discussed in school, in society nowadays. It is not a common topic that I basically heard about, and I basically had to find it out myself. I'm not saying that I discovered this knowledge. No, this knowledge has been around for thousands and thousands of years, and it basically can be traced back to creation. And we're going to be getting into all that. But it is very interesting how I came to this and how this is not really all that talked about, all that common. So I definitely want to explore it here. And definitely as we progress through the series, we're going to be getting into flow. We're going to be getting into gloving. But I definitely want to make it all make sense. And you'll see how sacred geometry kind of goes with flow, goes with everything really in life. And it can help you in your journey if you're trying to become a flow artist, to get this basic grid theory down. So without further ado, you'll be able to make those connections by yourself. You can definitely research this topic more. I'm only going to be giving you kind of an overview of what sacred geometry is. There's definitely more videos, more information out there. We can definitely talk for hours about this topic. We can talk for days about this topic. I don't even know everything about sacred geometry. I'm not saying I'm an expert at everything, but I kind of want to make it known to people who don't even know what sacred geometry is. So we're going to be getting into it, and you can definitely decide what you can gain from it at the end of this video. If you want to research more, if you heard enough in this video, you'll be the judge of that. But anyways, what is sacred geometry? Well, sacred geometry ascribes symbolic and sacred meanings to certain geometric shapes and certain geometric proportions. It is associated with the belief that God is the creator of the universe and universal geometer. This shape is not linked to any religion or culture. It is universal and can be easily created. As you can see, with the flower of life. It is just a bunch of overlapping circles that come together to create the sort of flower pattern, right? It just creates like 5 petals in the middle if you create it right. Why does it stop with 2 circles outside of it? That is another thing we will discuss later on. I'm definitely, maybe later on in my series, I'll definitely make more videos and go in depth on what the flower of life is. But basically, this pattern can go on forever and ever and ever and ever. But there's a sort of significance on why it stops at a certain at a certain length, basically. The flower of life. So the flower of life is another sacred geometric form. It is the symbol of creation. It is created by forming a circle, then moving to the edge of that circle and forming another one. And each circle begins 1 radius away from the surrounding circles and is of equal size. So I'll be definitely showing you visually how you can get this image, but you don't really start with this image because you start with 1 circle, and that makes kind of the seed of life when you have like this completed, 5 petals around here. And how does this all start? Well, it starts with spirit. So if there is nothingness in the universe per se, you can't really move. There's no real dimensions. There's nothing to fall down to, move forward to, move back to. It's just nothingness. So basically how this all starts, it starts with spirit. Now spirit has nowhere to move in a void, no body, no mind, so its spirit expands its consciousness and it creates the first circle. 360 degrees of awareness. It moves to the edge and repeats the same motion which creates the Vesica Pisces, which is another sacred geometric shapes, and which you can definitely see in your eyes. Your eyes, that's how you obtain light. That's how light is received into your eyes, and the brain can determine what that light is. So this sacred geometrical form can definitely, have a lot of meaning because you can definitely see it in your body. And you can see a lot of geometric shapes in your body because everything is created from geometry. But we'll get into that more later on. So this does it again and again until it completes the seed of life, which I talked about, or the Genesis pattern. So movement came before any light was created. This is very important because some people will say, light was created first and that's what gave kind of like birth to everything in existence. But no, before something was made, something had to move in order to create light and everything else in the universe. So this is very important. The oldest known example of the flower of life symbols dates all the way back to ancient Egypt. The wall reliefs in Temple of Osiris shows carvings from at least 6,000 years ago inscribed onto a structure called the Osirian in Abydos, Egypt. This geometric shape can also be found in Israel, China, Turkey, Egypt, India, Germany, Bulgaria, Sweden, France, Czech, Greece, and at least 14 other places. It can be found in our body as well as in nature, as in the cosmos. This sacred geometrical shape is everywhere. So basically, it is the pattern of the universe. It is not linked to anything, any religion, any sort of thinking. This is basically science, where science meets the spiritual. So how did these ancient people in the past know about this? How did they discover this before, science was as developed as in the modern world? That is something you can definitely research or come up with your own theory on that. But the thing is, this flower of life is found everywhere. And it is definitely pleasing to us because it is embedded in our DNA, it is embedded in our body, it is embedded in everywhere in the universe. It is basically the building block of life. As strange as this sounds, the Bible mimics correctly the geometric procession of the seed of life, basically, because it's basically 6 circles with one in the middle, which creates, the Genesis pattern. That's why it is called the Genesis pattern as well. And we can see in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 through 2, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Now, people make the mistake sometimes of taking everything in Genesis literal. But I sort of see it kind of in a, metaphorical way. Did God actually use 24 hours to create everything, in one day and then the other? Days can actually mean, different types of time. It could be years, it could be, decades, centuries. We don't really know. We can only make our own assumptions of what this really means. But in the Bible, it kind of like mimics the patterns of creations perfectly, which is kind of crazy to think about, because it's like, wow, okay, this makes too much sense. Like, these people knew something that we didn't know, really, because it's kind of amazing to explore that this can describe perfectly the pattern of creation. That's why it's called the Genesis pattern. Now, am I saying the Bible is 100% right, 100% truth? No, I want you to make your own opinion on that, your own thoughts on that. I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but it's kind of like a cool fact that it can definitely represent it perfectly to the pattern of creation. So in the days of creation, days 1, God created day and night. Day 2, clouds and oceans. Day 3, land, plants, and trees. Day 4, moon, sun, and stars. Day 5, birds and fish. Day 6, men and animals. And day 7, God rested. This is basic knowledge. If you read, pretty much everybody has read, Genesis, or knows about Genesis, how God created, everything in 7 days. But yeah, following this pattern, you can definitely create the seed of life, which creates the fruit of life, which creates the flower of life, which can be found in Metatron's cube, which can, on and on and on and so forth. So this basically represents that in a pattern. So you get the seed of life. The seed of life is a contemporary name for an ancient geometric figure. It consists of 7 overlapping circles, as we talked about, with the same diameter. 6 of them are regularly spaced within the 7th, producing a rosette with 18 lens-shaped petals, 6 smaller ones inside and 12 larger ones outside. This represents the interconnection of life on Earth and universal interconnectedness, right? So this is basic science. So basically, we're all made of the same pattern. We're not all the same, but we're made in the same way. This is how we're all connected, how we're all one, how we're basically more than just, body and mind, right? And this cannot be possible without spirit. And that's basically how you can tell that there's definitely something going on where, maybe there's something supernatural, maybe there's a divine being, many divine beings, who really knows. And this is why we're so prone to basically believing in the supernatural world, because so much of this cannot be coincidence, right? It would be just a whole mess of things, right? There wouldn't be any patterns, but as we can recognize in life, there's an order of things, right? After the sun sets, the moon rises, right? After 1, there's 2, right? 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. You know what I mean? There's some sort of order and pattern that it is, that has so much meaning to us. So we keep going. So then we get to Metatron's cube. Metatron's cube contains the most common shapes in nature, including circles and lines. Technically, it features 13 circles held together by straight lines. From the midpoint of each circle, there's a central circle surrounded by 6 circles, forming a flower-like shape, and another set of 6 circles extending from it. Now, in this shape, you can find the 5 Platonic solids, the seed of life, fruit of life, Vesica Pisces. You can find all the sacred geometrical shapes in this pattern, which makes it a powerful, powerful image. Now, we're not going to be getting into Archangel Metatron, which is, there's an origin story of him holding a cube, and it is said to be this representation of this image. And from this, we get the Platonic solids, right? The 5 Platonic solids, which represents the elements of the universe. So the series of connected lines form various shapes called the Platonic solids, which are said to be the basis for every design in the universe. Some of these shapes are the pyramids, cubes, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron. These geometrical shapes appear repeatedly and randomly in nature, which made the ancient Greeks associate them with 5 elements. Platonic solids, also known as regular solids or regular polyhedra, are solids with equivalent faces composed of congruent convex regular polygons. Platonic solids were studied by the ancient Greeks, who also call these solids cosmic solids, and are of 5 types. It is believed the 5 Platonic solids that exist in nature represents the 5 elements, which are earth, fire, air, water, and the universe, or prana, or ether, basically. So basically means space. So a Platonic solid is a 3D shape where each face is the same as a regular polygon, has the same number of faces meeting at each vertex. A regular convex polyhedron with identical faces made of congruent convex regular polygons is called a Platonic solid. So we named all the Platonic solids, and Plato, who was studying the Platonic solids, closely associated each shape with nature. The 5 types of Platonic solids are the tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron. So these are important to remember because they represent everything that is in the universe, what it's composed of, the 5 elements, basically. Then we get into the golden ratio. So the golden ratio is the symbol Greek letter phi, which is a special number approximately equal to 1.618. It appears many times in geometry, art, architecture, and other areas. Many buildings and artworks have the golden ratio in them, such as the Pantheon, Parthenon in Greece, but it is not really known if it was designed that way. Putting it as simply as we can, the golden ratio, also is known as the golden sextile. Golden means divine proportion, or Greek letter phi, exists when a line is divided into 2 parts and the longer part is divided by the smaller part is equal to the sum of a plus b divided plus a, which both equal 1.618. So basically, you add the 2 preceding numbers, right? So you can start with, this number starts with 1, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8, then 13, then 21, and so forth, right? This can continue till infinity. So these divided by each other will always get closer to 5, which is 1.618 approximately. It always comes close to 5, however, never reaching 5. It's something that goes like eternally getting closer and getting closer, but never really becoming that number, that exact number. So basically, what does all this have to do with flowing, flow arts? We'll get to that in the next video. However, it is important to realize these geometric shapes so you can have that kind of mentality that everything is sacred geometry, basically. You're playing with geometric shapes when you're flowing, when you're giving a light show. You're making squares, you're making circles, you're making triangles, you're basically messing with all these geometrical shapes that are embedded in us, basically, that we are attracted to because we are them, we become them, we mimic them, and we can mimic them with our hands, with our arms, with our whole body. And that's basically the beginning of how you kind of comprehend what you're really messing with. So we'll get to that in the next video, where I'll be talking about flow. And what is flow? How do we get into flow? How do we define flow? And this is the basics of it by knowing sacred geometry, because it's all connected, right? Everything comes from these sacred geometrical shapes. But it's going to come all together. But this can definitely help you out and help you kind of maintain that mindset that you want to follow these patterns, like, a spiral. A spiral can be seen in the golden ratio, right? You want to kind of mimic that in a perfect way, because our brain perceives that illusion, right? And it is connected to something deeper than us. It basically, involves spirit. So we'll be getting more into that, but definitely if you want to research more sacred geometry, I basically gave you like a basic overview, and right now we're at 21 minutes. So I can talk for hours and hours about what it means, the significance of it, and how it is embedded into us. So in the next video, I'll be going over flow, and what is flow, and how can we obtain flow, and how it is linked into flow arts. And it's called flow arts for a reason, and how it is involved with gloving, the art form of gloving. So we'll get into that in the next video. I hope you learned something new, something cool. And definitely, research these things, because it will help you if you're trying to become a flow artist. Trust me, because I wish I had known about this first before I became a flow artist, but it definitely helped my journey into it. And this can help you with life, and it's very interesting to learn, basically. Even if you've never heard of sacred geometry, you see how it's all connected, and how it all fits with nature, with the cosmos, with biology, with anatomy. Everything is connected through these sacred geometrical shapes. So I want you guys to know that and research this, so you can see life in a different light. Basically, it definitely, when as soon as you learn about sacred geometry and you go out into the world and see everything and how it is real geometry in real life, basically you'll start recognizing these patterns, and you'll start recognizing how it all fits together, basically. So I can keep going on and on about this, but we'll end it here. This has been the first part of my series, and we've covered the basics of sacred geometry. So I'll definitely see you guys in the next video. If you want to be updated, definitely subscribe. And I'll let you guys know when I will be posting my next video on my social media. If you want my social media, I'll definitely put it down there. You can get a hold of me, comment, whatever you need to do. But it will be coming soon. So I hope you guys have a good day, and I hope you guys learn something useful and something that is not talked about commonly, and make your own opinions about everything, because this is so so overwhelming. It can be overwhelming, but you can learn so much about life and the universe studying sacred geometry. Well, this has been the Night Shadow, guys. I'll see you guys again in the next one. Have a good one, everyone.